Happy Sunday, sports fans. Chris Durrell here, rotorpros.com, dailyfantasysportsrankings.com. Got a lot going on Sunday. We got NASCAR race at ISM, second last race of the season, last elimination race before the final next week at Homestead. We've got a little bit of messed up NHL slate. 2 games early. There's 4 games in the afternoon. FanDuel has got 4, but it starts a little later and includes that late game tonight as well. And then we got NFL Sunday, of course. I'm going to be talking all 3 here today. I've got all sheets open. I've got about 14 tabs open. So if you've got questions, just fire them away in chat. I'm going to start with NASCAR. And then I'm going to kind of transition into NFL as we get closer to lock. Going to be about 30, 40 minutes here. So if you've got questions, like I said, just fire them away and I will get to them. But like I said, I'm going to start with NASCAR. So we got the race at ISM. Like I said, it's the second last race of the season. It is an elimination race. Martin Truex Jr., Kevin Harvick have already won in this round, so they have automatically advanced. So a little bit of pressure off them, whether they can work on stuff for next year at Phoenix, or they can take things a little bit easier. Kind of puts them more in a GPP aspect for me this week because they don't really have. If they fall behind early, they're not going to really have to push the envelope to get up there, get the win. There's no more points. Everything resets after this race, so there's nothing. Those stage points don't matter. So they're out there either for the win or pretty much bust. So definitely those 2 are going to be GPP for me. Something with this track, if you're fairly new, ISM Raceway used to be Phoenix International Raceway. The end of 2017 going into the start of the 2018 season, they reconfigured the track. So the start-finish line used to be on the backstretch before turn 1 and turn 2. That start-finish line was moved over onto the other side of the track, kind of right in the middle of turn 2 going into the dogleg. Really changed things from a restart perspective. Through 3 races, we've seen that, 3 cup races. We've also seen it in the truck race as well as the Xfinity race there as well. They're getting 3, 4, 5 wide going into that dogleg off the restart, which makes for some exciting restarts. So something I've just kind of been looking at here this week is just the results from those 3 previous races. Well, one thing is clear. My number 1 driver this week is Kyle Busch. So 2018 in the spring, he led 128 laps, finished second. In the playoff race last year, he started 6th. He ended up winning, led 117 laps. And then this spring, he started 4th. He won that race, 177 laps. So he's finished second, first, and first. He's led 100-plus laps in each of the races. He's got a good track record here at Phoenix over the long run anyway. So he's going to be my definite number 1 spend up. And then, like I said, Harvick and Truex are going to be your GPP pivots this week. I think they're going to be just a little bit lower owned just because Kyle, I think, is going to be that dominant car. He's starting from the pole, so I think he's going to have a great chance to get out front and lead a bunch of laps. And then number 2 pick for me is number 3 in my model is Denny Hamlin. He'll be starting 3rd. He doesn't exactly need a win. I believe he's 23 points below the cut line. So he doesn't need a win, but it's going to be pretty close because Kyle and Logano are above him, above that cut line. Like I said, Truex and Harvick have already won, so they're already in. So it's going to be close to needing a win, so he's going to be pushing all out. So he came out and he was 2nd in first practice, 4th in 10-lap averages, 9th in the second practice, and then he was the fastest in 10-lap averages in that final practice. He'll be starting 3rd, so definitely going to be a core driver for me, 4th most expensive on DraftKings and FanDuel there. And then Joey Logano, of course, he is 4th, so he's sitting above the cut line. Number 8 in my model, he's starting 2nd. I don't think he's going to get the dominator points that Kyle Busch is possibly going to get, but I do see a top 5 finish. I see him pushing all day long. He is a little bit cheaper, only $9,900 on DraftKings, $11,500 on FanDuel. I like him just because of the lack of dominator points that I think he's going to get today. I like him a lot more on FanDuel, especially at that price. So he's probably my 2nd favorite driver on FanDuel, maybe one of my favorites if you're looking at building a balanced lineup. Logano is a great place to start. His teammate Ryan Blaney makes a lot of sense as well. 9,400 to 12 on DK. You could really pair those 2 together to make if you're going more balanced. That's definitely a great approach to take today. Both cars were fast. Blaney starting 10th, so it gives you a little bit of place differential value. He was 6th in opening practice, didn't run a 10-lap run. He was 2nd in final practice and 3rd in 10-lap averages in that final practice there as well. So he's got a fast car, so I like pairing those two together. That would be my favorite stack, I guess you could say, if you're looking to go a little bit more balanced and fading Kyle Busch, who is 15,000 on FanDuel, which is 500 more than Truex and 1,000 more than Harvick. So depending on whether you want to go stars and scrubs or want to go more balanced, there's definitely two ways to go, and I feel comfortable with both today. And just kind of going down the list a little bit, Clint Boyer for GPP, he's right around that 9K range on both sites. He's starting 13th, gives us a little bit of place differential value. I could see him as a top 5 car. I see him more in that 5th to 10th range, which is definitely good value, especially on FanDuel at only 9K, where the place differential isn't as important. So he was 7th in opening practice, 14th in final practice, and then 6th and 7th in 10-lap averages in those two practices. So he appears to be a top 10 car. Like I said, I'm kind of got him projected for like a 5th to 10th place finish, 6th to 10th place, I guess you could say. And then going down, another core driver I like, probably, again, a little bit more on FanDuel, is their teammate Eric Almirola. Starting 11th this week. He's been very good at this track since they redid it here. I'm just going to bring that up. So he was 7th in the spring of 2018, and then he was 4th in the playoff race last year, and then he was 4th this spring as well. So he's got a good track record. Looking at just kind of average finishes, he's 3rd behind Kyle Busch and Harvick here at ISM since they did the reconfiguration at the start of the 2018 season. Odds of Logano not getting punted by Denny Hamlin. Well, I have Kyle Busch winning this race, so I have him in, so that's 3, and that leaves that 1 spot. So I don't think the odds are good that Denny like I said, Denny, I got Kyle as the winner of this race. I think Denny's going to need obviously more than to finish ahead of Logano. He's going to need like 20 spots. So it's going to take, for Denny to get it, it's going to take a Logano, like electrical failure or an engine failure or a crash or problems on pit road. If Denny isn't going to win and Kyle's going to win, like I've got projected, the odds are low that Denny's going to get in. I think Logano's going to stick up there. Like I think Logano's got a top 5 car this week. I don't think he's got a winning car, but I do think top 5, which, if Kyle wins, that punts Denny right out of there. So I definitely got Logano advancing. I kind of got things staying the way they are when looking at the standings right now. I mean, anything can happen for sure. If Logano was to go, I think Denny's in a great spot because I think he's, like I said, a pushing top 5 car there as well. He showed a lot of speed, fastest in final practice. So, but a top 5 is not going to be good enough for Denny this week. So he would need something for Logano or Kyle to go wrong, I think, for Denny to advance if he's not going to win. And I don't think he's got that winning car. Things could change, like I said, but that's just what I got projected right now. And then just kind of moving down, looking at some value plays this week. I like Ryan Newman. Didn't really show a lot of speed in practice, but he's been very good here at Phoenix. And starting 20th, even if he's a 15th place car, I think that's enough value at his mid 7K price. He's only 7K on FanDuel. So DiBenedetto starting 16th. That is a lot more forward than I'd like to see, but he showed top signs of a top 5 car. He was 3rd fastest lap in opening practice, and then he was the 2nd fastest 10-lap average in final practice. So the upside is definitely there. He just doesn't have the track record, which he didn't on most tracks coming into this year. So definitely would be considering him a GPP play. FanDuel, he's only 6K. So that opens up getting 2 studs in your lineup. So with a driver with top 5, top 10 upside. So that makes a lot more sense on FanDuel than DraftKings for me. Okay. The Dillon brothers, definitely on my list. I've got them ranked Ty over Austin right now. Ty starting 29th. Looking at, let's just bring it up here. Going to look at the last 3 years again, like looking at that data since the reconfiguration of the track. 30th, 19th, and 15th. So that was going oldest to newest. So 15th this spring, 19th in the playoff race last year, 30th in the spring of 2018 for Ty. And he comes in and he will be starting 29th this week. So somewhere in that, even a 20th place finish, I think is really good for his price. 6,200 on DraftKings, 5 on FanDuel. And then Austin Dillon, just a little more expensive, starting 28th. He showed top 20 speed in practice. He was 13th in 10-lap averages in final practice, which is good, 15th fastest lap. So I think he's got a 15th to 20th place car. And starting 28th, that gives you that place differential upside, as well as that finishing points for FanDuel as well. So those are probably my two favorite of the value plays. And then David Reagan, if you're going to be punting, he's starting 30th. He looks like he's got like a 20th to 25th place car for sure. And looking at his three races here, 25th this spring, 20th in the playoff race last fall. That was starting 29th and 31st in those two races. Then he started 16th in the spring race in 2018 and finished 22nd there. So he's got a pretty good track record here for starting 30th. Gives you that place differential upside and a ton of salary savings so that you can go that stars and scrubs if you want to pair even like a Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick if you wanted to, but a Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, or Ryan Blaney, or Denny Hamlin. Any of those four, which are my top core guys in that top tier, you can definitely go two of them, possibly even three of them on FanDuel by using David Reagan in there. So that kind of covers my core plays for NASCAR. So in my GPPs, I'm kind of going to be going that route, either, like I said, the Logano Blaney balanced route in lineups. You can get Eric Almirola in there as well when you, in terms of talking with FanDuel. You can build a really nice balanced lineup, possibly get all top tens in your lineup with the winner, which would be huge. I mean, if you think that Kyle Busch possibly isn't going to win, I mean, the odds, it looks good for him right now, but like I said, anything can happen, and he hasn't won in a while. So it can definitely bet against that and fade that, his high ownership that's possibly going to be there in GPPs. Say he gets in a crash, has a mechanical failure, which we've seen from other drivers happen every week. So fading that and going more balanced might be a nice GPP play on FanDuel there. So, but that's the route I'm going this week. Going to be kind of split between the stars and scrubs and the balanced. Probably have Kyle Busch, and I would say about 60%. So I'm probably more 60-40 going stars and scrubs versus the balanced. A little bit more balanced when it comes to FanDuel. So if there's any other NASCAR questions, fire away here. I'm just going to touch on some core plays for NFL today. We got lineup lock in about 45 minutes here. Got my plays up on the members only sheet that you can get at Roto Pros or Daily Fantasy Sports Rankings. I not only highlight my top plays, but I also have my top targets tab where I rank those plays at each position as well. So I'll just touch on a couple at each position. Lamar Jackson is my number one cash play this week. I really like the rushing upside that he brings, upside and floor, that running. And then you look at the matchup against the Bengals. They have allowed the most rushing yards per game to quarterbacks, 44. And that, while that may not seem like a lot, 44 yards per game rushing to the quarterbacks, the next closest or the next worst team would be Seattle. They've only allowed 23.4, Arizona 21.7, and Carolina 21. There's only four teams that have allowed 20 or more. Cincinnati's allowed 44. He was sick during the week. He's expected to play. Got no problems with Lamar Jackson. He's my top cash game guy. I think just with his rising price, I think the upside's maybe a little bit limited today. I could see Mark Ingram getting, maybe robbing a touchdown or two, taking away that upside. But for cash games, Lamar is definitely there. I think if you really wanted to go cheaper, especially on FanDuel, you could consider Jameis Winston. Highest total of the day. It's a fairly close spread, minus 4.5 points for Tampa Bay. Both teams are top 10 in pace, so this could be a very high-paced game. Could see 40-plus pass attempts from both Winston and Murray. I'm just going with Winston a little bit more. Just he's only $200 more on FanDuel. On FanDuel, he's only $7,900. Kyler Murray $7,700. I'm leaning in that direction just because I like the receiving options better for Tampa Bay. You got Godwin and Mike Evans on the outside there. Really like those two for him. And then Kyler Murray, more for GPPs. I do have him listed as a core play, but he's going to be a little bit more savings in GPP, and I will be pairing him with Larry Fitzgerald, who looks like he's going to be – his production is down. Christian Kirk's production is up. So Larry Fitzgerald is obviously going to be a little bit cheaper now. I think he's going to be the lower-owned play today. I definitely like Larry Fitzgerald in cash games. I think that's going to be there. Tampa Bay's given up a ton. I believe it's Vernon Hargraves who's going to be covering the slot there. gives up a ton of production to slot receivers. Miami defense, we've got a question here from D. Just going to bring up their numbers here, looking at Miami. Yeah, if you're going to punt, Indy is with Hoyer. Hoyer did look not too bad last week. I guess if you're looking for a punt, that would be a way to go. I would much rather just go up to Kansas City. Like looking at Miami, just looking at the stats here, they've got 12 sacks, which is 30th in the league. And looking at their D-line, it's ranked 29th overall in adjusted sack rate versus Indy has they rank 12th when in terms of adjusted sack rate for their offensive line, so they're not giving up many sacks. Miami doesn't have a lot of takeaways. They've only got 4 takeaways on the season. That's second worst. And they've given up 10 giveaways, which is 10th least. So I just really don't like the matchup there for a floor, which I always look for defenses. I'm looking for sacks. I'm looking for good D lines versus bad O lines. If you can get 3-4 sacks, it gives you a nice floor for defense. Even if they give up over 20 points, it's still going to give you that 7 to 10 point floor, which is what the Colts have been doing. So I love the Colts on the other side. Obviously, they're more expensive. On the cheap side, I'm definitely looking at the Chiefs. They are 7th in overall sacks. Tennessee's given up the most sacks, and then looking at the kind of the adjusted sack rates from that's Fantasy Outsiders that provides that information. D-line, you've got Kansas City who ranks 8th versus the 31st ranked offensive line. So definitely like spending up that little bit more for the Kansas City Chiefs today. Awesome. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for joining me, D. You're playing a lot of New Orleans and Atlanta. Now, I think you're obviously talking offense. I'm more on the New Orleans side. I like Kamara coming back in this matchup. Atlanta has been a lot better against running backs this season. Last year, they'd given up the most passing yards to running backs. They were missing Deion Jones. They were missing a lot of the core of their defense last year. They've been a lot better this year. So I think that kind of takes you away a little bit. They've given up the least amount of passing yards, only 213 passing yards to running backs this season, 3 touchdowns. So the touchdowns have been there on the receiving side of things. So I think Kamara maybe falls a little bit below. Just going to kind of look at some ownership here and see where he's at. Michael Thomas, I wrote up in my cash game article for RotoPros that he was my number 1 cash. If you have the money to spend up, it's either McCaffrey or Michael Thomas for me in cash games. Those are your 2 big pay-ups. Michael Thomas has been good. Doesn't matter if it was Teddy Bridgewater. He's now got Drew Brees back. He's getting 10-plus targets per week. He's catching like 85, 87% of those balls. So the floor is sky high for him. So I'm definitely looking at him a little bit for cash. I would look at Kamara more as the pivot in GPP formats. Hoyer, Pascal, Mack. I really like Mack in this game. Hoyer's really cheap. I mean, you can definitely fit him with Pascal with Hilton out. I think he's going to see, let's say, a floor of 5 to 7 targets and a ceiling of maybe 10 to 12 targets for Pascal. So I think that GPP upside is there to stack those 2 guys together. It's cheap to be able to go up and spend up for McCaffrey or Michael Thomas or Chris Godwin or Mike Evans, or just absolutely load up the rest of your lineup. Mack is my favorite for cash games out of that, obviously. I think he's going to get some run against Miami, who is dead last pretty much in all metrics against running backs. So I like Mack to get a good run here today. So that kind of jumps into the running back side of things. Like I said, you can spend up for McCaffrey or Barkley. Kamara more for GPPs. I think that might fall a little bit lower in ownership, and we're going to touch on. And for ownership, I'm definitely looking at Fanshare Sports. I work closely with their product. They kind of go over and look at all social media mentions, anyone that shows up in an article, a video, a podcast, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. They give you sentiment ratings, projections, and that sort of thing. So I'm not going to dive into all their projections and stuff. You're going to have to go check that out for yourself. But I will touch on a few players that I think stand out to me today. So just kind of going through the running backs and the pricing. Even with his high price, I think McCaffrey is probably going to end up being high owned. It's not like at that price he's not hitting value. I wrote up in my cash article he's actually hit value at that price in all but 2 of his 8 games this season. So the price is kind of right there. I think you could even put him up $500 on, if he has a good game today. I could definitely see that happening, going $500 into next week. I do like David Johnson over Kenyon Drake. Their plan, I think, is to have David Johnson as the number 1. Drake was just kind of brought in because they weren't it seems like they were possibly unsure about the health of Johnson. I think it's not exactly a split, maybe like a 60-40. Drake kind of falls into that Edmonds role. So I definitely like Johnson more than Drake here. Other guys I like at running back, Jalen Samuels, a little bit more on FanDuel at 6,200, despite him having more value in the PPR side of things. So it kind of balances out, I guess, with their price. Makes sense that he's a little bit lower. The problem with the Rams today and why I'm not going to have as much Samuels coming off that, I don't want to say huge week last week. He didn't really get there on the rushing, but he got there on the receiving, is the Rams are bottom 10 in receiving yards to running backs as well. So they've been really good against running backs in terms of receiving. So that kind of knocks Samuels down my list a little bit. For value, especially on DraftKings, love Devin Singletary for Buffalo. He's kind of taking over as the season goes on. Him and Gore, it was mostly Gore, and then it was kind of split, and now Singletary seems to be taking over. Going up against Cleveland, who ranks 22nd in points against running backs, second most rushing yards per game. So definitely like the matchup for him, even pairing him, with a Buffalo defense against a struggling Cleveland team, but mostly just Singletary, and I would consider him in cash games at 5K there as well. Ronald Jones is really cheap. I think in that game, Tampa Bay being a favorite, it's going to be an up-paced game. He could get multiple shots inside the 5-yard line to score touchdowns. I think he can get around, 70. I think his rushing prop today was somewhere around 68.5 yards or something like that. I think you could also bet the over if you can find it there. I think he's more in that 70 to 90 yards range, maybe a touchdown, possibly two. So as a GPP contrarian, like I said, I like Murray a lot as a quarterback in GPPs. It gives you not only a little bit of salary relief, he could give you 40 plus passes, multiple touchdowns. I wouldn't mind pairing him with either Kirk or Fitzgerald. And then to keep that even a little bit more contrarian, instead of running that back with Godwin or Evans, you could go run that back with Ronald Jones, who could be obviously lower owned of those two. It's less likely that he's going to hit value than that those two do, but it's definitely the upside is there in this matchup, and he's very cheap, especially 4,300 on DraftKings. A little bit more, probably even lower owned on FanDuel at 6,300. So I definitely like that as well. David Montgomery, he's a guy that stands out to me. Values on both sites. He's another running. It's maybe a little bit risky. Rookie running back. They've kind of, he should be getting the ball more. Chicago should be running it more. I think that's really starting to come for him, and it's a great matchup. Detroit's given up the most points to running backs. So Matt Stafford is also out today. You got Jeff Driscoll getting the start for Detroit. So the odds really started to sway in Chicago's favor. I think they're maybe even up to 3.5-point favorites now. So the game script could be a little bit better for David Montgomery. So I like him a little bit more this morning than I did yesterday. So he's definitely there. And then on the wide receiver, some mid-range guys. We all know the top guys. Like I said, Evans, Godwin, Michael Thomas are my core. Julio Jones and Hill, I think, make great pivots. Especially Julio. His price is down a little bit because of the matchup. I mean, Lattimore is no pushover. He's a really good corner. But Julio is also an elite wide receiver. And if you can get him under 15% owned in GPPs, while Michael Thomas and Evans and Godwin are all going to be 20% plus owned, I think that makes for a great pivot this week. In the mid-range, safety guys, I like John Brown and Golden Tate. John Brown, a little bit higher up, especially on FanDuel, only 5,800. Definite cash play. Despite Buffalo not throwing as much, John Brown has been the guy that Josh Allen has turned to, so I'd definitely like his floor. Golden Tate, we got Shepard and Ingram out, so I think Tate again gets around 10 targets. What he can do with those in the slot, it's not the greatest matchup for Tate. That's kind of why I got Brown a little bit ahead of him, but I think the targets and the usage is definitely going to be there. Talked about Larry Fitzgerald, definitely like him. I think he's going to be lower owned this week. He's only 5,400 on FanDuel, so he's almost a lock in cash games there for me. Talked about Kirk. He's actually cheaper than Fitzgerald. I messed that up. I said Fitzgerald was cheaper, and I think Fitzgerald is cheaper on FanDuel. Kirk is cheaper on DraftKings. Talked about Zach Pascal when you mentioned the Indy stack, and I think that's contrarian. Maybe going Hoyer and Pascal over Mack, who's going to be the higher owned Colt today, I think, in that plus matchup against Miami. like Kirk Moore. Yeah, Kirk is the guy definitely for the future. They drafted him to be that guy in this high-paced offense, four wide gun offense like this. He's definitely the guy in there. I just really like the matchup for Fitzgerald today, and the fact that he's going to be lower owned. Tampa Bay Hargraves, he's been terrible in the slot, giving up I think 200+ yard games and over 75% catch rate in the last 4 weeks. So that's why I'm going back to Fitzgerald, because he has let us down since the start of the season. I think that really helps produce that lower ownership. So I definitely like both, though, today in this project. There could be 50, 60 points in this game. Could be a very high pace. So definitely like both. Yeah, Kelsey at tight end for sure. He's very expensive. So it just leads to more decisions. Do you want McCaffrey, Thomas, Lamar Jackson, those expensive guys at the other positions, or do you want Kelsey? Kelsey's definitely going to be the lower owned of those other guys, I think, when you're talking in terms of like Michael Thomas, Godwin, Evans at wide receiver, and then McCaffrey, even Barkley at the running back position. So I think it's more of a GPP play. I don't think I'll be going there for cash. For cash games, I definitely like Gesicki for Miami. Super cheap, especially on DraftKings, $3,100. He opens up a ton of salary to spend up at those other positions, and he's been solid lately. I mean, Fitzpatrick has come in and actually made Miami look like an actual NFL team, not like a team that's just going to roll over. And the rest of the players, you can really see how they've responded and played with Fitzpatrick there behind center. So I definitely like Gesicki. I don't see a ton of upside from him, but they do pass a lot. And, he's been a little bit more productive. So I could see like 5 to 7 targets for him. If he catches 3 or 4 for 50 yards, I think I'm happy there in the fact that I'll be able to spend up at the other positions. But if I am spending up at tight end, in cash games especially, it's going to be Austin Hooper in that New Orleans game. New Orleans hasn't been the greatest against tight end. So I think that's maybe a spot where we can see Hooper, catch 7 to 10 balls, 7 to 9, somewhere in there for 50+ yards. And possibly get in there in the end zone as well. I believe he has been pretty good in terms of getting targets in the red zone. I'm just going to check up on that and get to the right tab here. Let's go tight ends. Oh, going real slow here. Yeah, so he's down a little bit. He's got 10, so he's in the top 10 among tight ends, but he's caught 7 of 5 of them for 5 touchdowns. So I definitely see that touchdown upside. So I like Hooper, and then I'm going back to Mark Andrews as well against Cincinnati. They've been a little bit better overall as a team against tight ends, but I like the matchup for Andrews this week. And with John Brown banged up, I think the targets are going to be there for Andrews over the middle. I think it's going to be a Lamar Jackson and Ingram rushing, and then that play action, you're going to get some Andrews in there. I think definitely see him 50 to 100 yards this week, probably somewhere in the range of that 6 to 10 targets as well. I think that's enough for him to hit value. But Gesicki is definitely my number one in cash, just to give you – I think he provides enough to give you that value at that low price, which opens up the salary at other positions. I'm just going to wrap things up here. Hit the half an hour mark. Do you like Vance McDonald? I do. He didn't make my top 5 tight ends this week, but the Rams definitely are. I think they're 11th most points to tight ends, and I think he can get some targets there as well. So he's not my favorite, but he's definitely on my list, just outside of my top 5. Yeah, both Evans and Godwin. Godwin's a lot safer. He's been the more efficient guy. The catch rates, I think, like 10 to 15% higher on him. The upside's been a little bit higher, I guess you could say, on Evans, but the downside's also been there as well. So I definitely like both in this matchup. Like I said, this is both teams' top 10 pace. Could be 40 passing attempts for both teams. So we're on. We didn't touch on NHL, didn't have any NHL questions, but definitely hit me up in the DFSR chat or the Roto Pros chat, and I can definitely answer your NHL questions. We don't got that until, I believe it's 2 hours after NFL lock there, so definitely hit me up there. Thanks for joining me. Good good luck in whatever sport you're playing today. NBA sheet is up on both sites as well. So that's NFL, the members only NFL sheet is up, Roto on both sites, Roto Pros, DFSR. Got the NHL sheet up. Got more plays coming on the NHL sheet here. Once lock is done, the NBA sheet is up, and then the NASCAR sheet as well. Good luck today. Let's go get some green screens. Peace.